Good day, everyone. Welcome to week number 5 for Decipher Wars Radio. I am your host, Mark Tuttle. This program deals with everything there is to know about the Decipher upcoming release of the Muon Rift Wars TCG. We are 75 days now from the release of Decipher's first proprietary game, and that means just a little over 2 months away, and we've still got a long way to go, but we've got some really great stuff to tell you about today. We've got some great email coming up in just a couple of moments. We've also got a terrific big reveal today, so be ready for that. And we're also going to tell you what the mysterious Email of the Week prizes are that a couple of people have won already, and somebody else will win today. That's in just a few moments from right now. First, though, our weekly interview. This gentleman has been here before. You said you wanted to talk about game mechanics, so Tom Lischke from the Decipher Game Studio is back. Tom, welcome back to Decipher Wars Radio.
Good to be back, Mark.
We had a play test in-house here this last weekend for Wars TCG. We flew a bunch of guys in from really all over U.S. and Canada. How did that go before we get into anything else?
Really went pretty well. The system played out pretty well, which is what I was looking for on the weekend. Development is more on a card basis at this point, making sure that we're doing good, exciting cards that aren't overly strong. I just want to make sure that the Sport Icon system is functioning well, and it really worked pretty well.
So this differed from the Origins playtest in that now these guys got a chance to play with some of the stronger cards, the more power cards, the cards that will probably end up being rares in the set.
Yeah, things that are a little bit more complicated. We still have some room to play around a little bit, designing some more complex cards, some deeper cards, but the cards they were playing this weekend were more of what you will see in the final set.
And these guys are regular playtesters. They're our satellite playtesters, so they'd seen these cards before, so they came in here with a pretty good idea of the various decks that they wanted to play.
Yeah, we asked them to come in with a little bit of a plan so that they don't spend a lot of time at the beginning thinking about what decks they want to play. So, they really hit the ground running. It was neat to see some old faces because a lot of these guys were testers back in the SWCCG days. So, back in the saddle again for those guys.
All right. Let's talk about the rules changes from the Star Wars CCG to the Wars TCG. This has been a big topic of conversation on the message boards. When we announced that we were bringing the mechanics back, we said, look, we understood that the Star Wars CCG had some issues. There were some problems that crept in. There were some things that we just, looking back on, wished we'd done a little bit differently.
It's a great engine. Has a great feel. That being said, there's a little bit of room for improvement. That was back towards the beginning of when companies were making TCGs, and we did some things really well, and there are some things that probably we put in there to observe some story things that the game would run a little smoother with those taken out. So we're looking at a few of those things to make the gameplay as fun as it can be and as accessible as it can be.
All right, let's talk about a few. Let's start with movement. This is a big change from the SWCCG engine.
Oh, not a big change, Mark. The difference is really that it's unlimited now. You can, as long as you have energy to spend, you can keep moving your guys around. We did that primarily to get rid of the memory issue. You don't want to have to remember for each unit that you have control of whether or not it's moved. It doesn't seem like a big issue, but anything that you have to spend time on remembering, you're probably getting away from the fun part of the game.
Not to mention the fact it allows you to a little more freedom in getting around the board because the SWCCG engine is very strategic in where your cards are placed on the table.
Absolutely. A lot of the game's based around interaction, and the harder it is to get characters together to do that interacting, the less of that side of the game you see. At the same time, we know that the unlimited movement will let people run away a little bit more freely, but there's always a solution to that because you can always just deploy on top of them.
Does this mean we'll have less of the kind of cards that move groups as a whole, a la the Nabran Leads and the Ellis Hellrots of the old days?
I'm not necessarily sure that that's true. We're doing a loaded keyword for vehicles. Not every vehicle will have it, but a lot of them, which will let them move groups of characters, kind of like there were some infantry officers back in the old game which would move a group of guys at once.
Is the keyword Zoom Zoom?
It is not.
Not Zoom Zoom.
Not
okay.
Zoom Zoom.
Guys, you can write this down for your spoilers. Are there any factions that take advantage of this unlimited movement?
It'll be a strength of a couple of the factions. They'll get some verb cards probably that play off of it a little bit. The Quay don't mind chasing you down and killing you wherever they manage to catch up. Revenge is a little bit in their makeup, so
okay.
They're motivated.
All right, next change, combining defense value and forfeit. Is this working like you guys would hope this would come out?
It's getting there. It's taken a little bit of time. There were some, it's an iterative process, and we've had some iterations on this. The two things did do some things that are a little bit different. So getting them to work, there's a middle ground that we want to find that makes it really work once we combine it. And it's so much easier to teach and so much easier to understand that it makes it worth the effort. And it'll be a little different from what it was before, but it'll take a little bit of getting used to for the old-time players.
One of the things that the old-time players, as you just called them, that they're going to get used to in this is the potential card limit. And we haven't decided what the number is going to be yet exactly, but it's probably not going to be the unlimited card limit that we saw in the SWCCG, where you could have 40 of one card in a deck.
Yeah, there's a variety of reasons why that's probably not a great idea and why card games don't really do that. It provided a few things. It really restricted us in a lot of other ways. For instance, unique cards and non-unique cards had to be balanced vastly different from each other, which was a major design restriction. We couldn't really make good non-unique cards. And a big ramification, or a big reason that's important is because a lot more of the characters and vehicles and ships in this game are going to be non-unique. So having that restriction on us would have really been a big handicap in our ability to do fun and exciting cards.
The numbers that we're looking at now are 4 or 6.
Somewhere in there. We're leaning pretty heavily on 4 at this point. We haven't seen a lot of data going the other way. It's a pretty deep subject, and I'll go into a lot of detail of that on my design diary this week. I feel bad to the guys who read my design diary. I asked them to come and listen to this because I said we'd talk about it here, but I think going through all of their responses and looking at it, I think that I can really do a lot more justice to the questions on a text format.
Why is a card limit such a big thing to some of these guys? What does this change in the game? Because I've read all the message boards and I've read all the arguments, and some of them get very, very long. Why is this so big to these guys? What does this change in their gameplay?
Well, any long-time and hardcore TCG player realizes that the thing that you really strive for when you build your deck is consistency and control over what's going to happen. And the higher the card limit, the more consistency and control you get. From a card design point of view, that isn't necessarily the healthiest thing in the world for the game. There's a balance there. We don't want the game to feel random or feel like it's just the luck of the draw at the beginning of the game. But I think there will be other things that we'll put in the game which help mitigate that.
So, for example, in the old Star Wars days, you played a hunt-down deck. You really needed to get that Vader in the opening draw.
Yeah, you could put in 6 Vaders and you know he's going to be there. I mean, law of averages just says that that'll happen most of the time. A problem with that is that the decks really seem to play the same every time, and there's not, you and I could play those decks together 3 times and we're going to have essentially the same game every time. And does my computer program beat your computer program? I don't know that that's necessarily the best thing for a TCG.
Okay, so somewhere between 4 and 6 is what we're going to see with Wars TCG.
Yep, and like I said, I'll go into a little more detail on that. Well, a lot more detail on that on my design diary this week. People
had their favorite cards in the old SWCCG, and they want to know, is this type of card going to be in the set? Is that type of card going to be in the set? Let's talk about a few of the really unique and really kind of industry changing cards that we kind of introduced in the SWCCG. Starting interrupts, objectives, that kind of thing. They were very storyline-based cards.
Well, there were 2 things. They were very story, and they were also very much something that accelerated the opening pace of the game to the point, actually, at the end of the game where it was so accelerated that it fed back into that control loop. You had so much control, and a lot of the chance was taken out of the game. So we're going to hold off on those from the beginning for a couple of reasons. I think we'd like to see players not have as much control over the opening part of the game. It'll still be there, but you'll have to go through other methods to really bring that into your deck.
How about epic events? Now, these were cards that differed from the objectives in that they didn't so much set the game up, but it was kind of an in-game condition. It was almost a game within a game that you were trying to accomplish.
Well, I think that we'll do a better job with those if we wait a set or 2. We haven't talked about them specifically. We just know that we're not going to do them in the first set. But I think that even if we were planning to do them for sure, we would want to not do them right away just so we came to understand the system and were able to do good cards, because there's nothing worse than a bad epic event.
All right, let's talk about the factions. Who plays well with others? Do certain factions have strengths that kind of directly fill the weaknesses of another faction?
Well, I think that's really going to be something that we're going to leave for the players to sort of discover and make their own decisions. From a system point of view, no faction should really play better with any other faction. It's all kind of equal. And what was interesting is the combinations that players were playing together over the playtest weekend varied quite a bit. So that was actually good to see, because the more combinations are viable and interesting, the more diversity you'll see in the decks that you play against, which is really a goal of ours.
What are you playing right now? What deck is Tom Lischke playing at this moment?
I am playing a Maverick and Gonjin deck. Kind of love to see the gunslinging Maverick heroes running around with Gonjin swords. It just amuses me for some reason. Plus the gameplay on those two combines pretty nicely.
Can you tell us about a card that former Star Wars players might find a bit familiar, either in text or function or perhaps card name?
Well, probably not card name. And even if that was going to be the case, I couldn't tell you that now because we don't have the final card names yet. We're just starting to work through that side of things. One of the things we opted not to fix with a system fix was the issue of large hand size. We just thought we wanted to leave that freedom in the game and not clutter it up with an extra rule. But that leaves a little bit of a hole in the system, so it's kind of referee that a little bit. There'll be a form of Monarch coming back for sure. I don't know what quite goes in the second function yet, or if it even has a second function, but it'll, you're not going to want to run around with 20 cards in your hand, that's for sure. But that's just one example. There's, everybody tried to push their favorite cards into the system, and you'll be seeing a lot of that going forward, I'm sure.
All right, and you guys have a deadline coming up here very soon to have this set done. Are you looking toward the second set yet? And if so, how will the expansions work? Let's say the first expansion for Wars TCG, will it focus on maybe Ganjin Kuei more so than kind of the other three? Is it going to be kind of balanced between all of them? How are you guys going to work that?
Well, at least in the beginning, they're always going to be balanced. It's really an important factor for limited play that when you go to draft, that when you look at the first pack, you're going to have equal access to all the cultures come in the second pack. From the beginning, that'll be our path. So, who's to say what could happen eventually, but that's where we're going to start from. As for looking to the second set, I can't even imagine thinking about it just yet. So maybe in a couple weeks.
All right, Tom Lischke, Decipher Game Studio, thank you for joining us once again. Design Diary every Friday on the message boards.
Yep.
And do you take requests if people want you to talk about certain things? Can they shoot you an email or leave you a message?
Well, just bring up your issues on the gameplay boards, and I sort of go through theirs. So do the other guys, and if we see a topic that's interesting to talk about, we'll talk about it. Brad DeFruiter, one of the other designers, I get about one email a week from him saying, I saw this interesting post on the gameplay board. Why don't you talk about this week? That really does trigger a lot of the things we talk about. We can tell what people are interested in. I mean, they're talking about it all the time.
So the important thing is we are reading their input, and we know what they think about these issues.
Yep, that's for sure.
All right, Tom, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Sure, Mark.
All right, moving along on Decipher Wars Radio, it's time for email.
Email, we get email. We get your email every day. Here's your mail today.
And I hear that Kieran is considering incorporating the email song in one of the next tracks for the Wars soundtrack. Okay, here we go, folks. A little international flavor in our email for today, which is great because the old SWCCG had lots and lots of players overseas in Europe and France and Germany and all over the world. So it's good to see these guys weighing in as well. Here we go. This is from Henrik in Hungary. He says, hey, I think the Wars Radio is an excellent idea to promote the game. Also, I enjoyed the video trailer just released. If you folks have missed that, you haven't seen it yet, you need to go to warstcg.com. My question would be, is the Gen Con Indie Wars presentation, will it feature actual ready cards with final design and art and game demos, or just some piece of art and game concepts? Well, I'm going to save a little bit of this for next week's show because we're going to talk about all the good war stuff happening at Gen Con, which is also the site of our DecipherCon 2004 this year. But I will tell you, Henrik, if you are planning on going to Gen Con, you will see what the final cards will look like and maybe even get a chance to play a little bit. All right, so we'll save some details for that for next week as we talk about Gen Con in more detail. Next up, this will be our email of the week because Karsten from Germany asks a great question. He says, hello, Mark. I'm very anxious for this week's show. The Ford card limit discussion and the hint to the She Big reveal sound really great. In last week's interview with Warren Holland, he said that Decipher wants to bring collectors to the game. The art is a good reason to start collecting a game, but is there more? Are there foils planned for Wars? And if yes, will they appear as a parallel set as in The Lord of the Rings. Well, I can tell you that we are going to have a beautiful set of foils for Wars. It is not going to be a complete parallel set like you saw in The Lord of the Rings. It'll be a much smaller set like we've done in some of our other games, but there'll be a lot of great opportunities for you to pick up some great-looking foils, and we're doing some kind of different, kind of fun things with foils for Wars, so you guys are going to see some really great stuff when it comes to collecting your sets of the Muman Rift Wars TCG. All right, Karsten, you are my email of the week. That means you win a great prize. Now, we've given away 5 of these kind of nebulous email prizes for the letters that I identify as email of the week. Here's what you're going to get, okay? A lot of you guys that have been asking me, and a lot of people have been saying, what are we going to get? What are we going to get? Is it cards? Is it pieces of artwork? Blah, blah, blah. What's it going to be? Here's what you're going to get. One of the things that we are going to do at the Gen Con Wars TCG presentation, we've already announced this, is that we're going to have the T-shirts at the presentation. Actually, what we're going to be doing is we're going to pass out a goodie bag at that presentation, which the bag itself is well worth getting your hands on, and you'll know what I mean when we talk more about that later. But you're going to get the goodie bag that we are going to pass out at the Gen Con 2004 Wars TCG presentation. Now, if you are not able to get to Gen Con, well, then maybe you want your letter to be read as letter of the week, so you can get your hands on one of these, all right? So send your emails in to wars.radio@decipher.com, and every week I'll pick one of them. That will be the letter of the week. So congratulations this week to Karsten and the 4 people that have won previously. You guys all win the goodie bags that we're passing out at the Gen Con Wars TCG presentation next month in Indianapolis, all right? Big reveal time. This is a good one, folks, and I'm really surprised that there hasn't been more discussion on what the She look like. You haven't seen it yet. They're not on the preview postcard. They haven't been released to the public yet. This is the first opportunity you're going to have to see what the She look like. Now, the She are the first alien race to come through the rift. They're the ones that actually open the rift. It's their planet that comes through, and these guys are from a planet that is mostly covered with water. So think about that when you're looking at what you're going to see at this link. Here we go. warstcg.com/articles with a capital A /article with a capital A .aspx capital I capital D equals 363. That is your link for the big reveal. I'm not going to repeat it because all you got to do is just wind this back and listen to it again. So there's really no sense for me doing that. And what you're specifically looking at, folks, this is from our Wars TCG style guide. This is the conceptual art for the Crown class She. They are kind of the upper crust of the She society. They're the very arrogant, very kind of wealthy, kind of aristocratic She. But they know how to fight. All right, so great image of the She. I expect a lot of talk on the message boards and in email about this image for today's big reveal. As always, I would ask that you please don't post this link, as we would like everybody to listen and enjoy Decipher Wars Radio. All right, that's it for this week, folks. Next week, we will talk about all things Wars TCG at Gen Con /DecipherCon. That is coming up on August 19th. We'll tell you about that next week. Big reveal for next week. What good is sci-fi without giant robots? We've got them in Wars TCG, and next week, we're going to show you a no-bot. And we'll explain that to you as well. And next week's guest will be Dan Bojanowski from Decipher's Organized Play Division. We're going to talk about all the great ways that you can win playing Wars TCG. If you have comments, suggestions, feedback, or you want to just beg for more spoilers, email me at wars.radio@decipher.com. That's all for this week on Decipher Wars Radio. Have a great week. We will see you next Friday.
Signal verification is complete.